How are you doing? Breaking news. Well, it turns out that what we were talking about a little while ago, just a few moments ago, about protests happening in Iran. Well, on different social networks, different images, even Iranian media outlets have been commenting on this situation, on these protests. Let's get into the details of what's been happening. So, what has happened in Iran, and more importantly, what has happened not only in Iran, but what are the Farsi channels saying? What are the channels in Persian or Farsi, this official language, saying? Iran? Because it has caught people's attention that a series of images showing protests have been appearing on social media in that country. The protests are not only happening in the capital of Iran, but let's go into detail about what is being claimed. What they claim is that it's a widespread protest in different parts of Iran. And apparently this has already been going on for several days, with protests happening here and there. But things have been escalating according to recent reports in the media and on social networks. In images that have also been shown, there have been a lot of videos and messages talking about the collapse of the Ayatollah's regime. These posts, according to what people are saying, portray not only pay attention, it's not just people protesting, but they've also been sharing images of members of the army and police in Iran who claim that what's coming is a difficult time for Iran. Essentially, what's coming is a regime change. We're talking about the fact that in Iran there are two armies, the army of the Ayatollahs, which is known as the Revolutionary Guard. It's the largest army and it's the one controlled by the supreme leader, the Ayatollah. And on the other hand, there's the Constitutional Army, which is the army controlled by the president, and it's a smaller army. Is that it? Or are there groups within that army? They have been showing, well, that they would be willing to do anything, even showing their faces, saying that they are willing for there to be a change. A series of things are emerging that catch my attention. According to what has been spread, what has been found in the political and economic situation, they are on the verge of collapse at a critical point. Let's deliver the messages as a call for more mobilizations in the coming days, so that these protests last long enough to bring about change in that country. Well, this is a topic that is starting to attract a lot of attention. More and more images of these protests are starting to appear. And I don't doubt that some protests are from a few days before, a few days after, but this is what's being shared right now. It's because the currency has lost value, inflation is high, and there's also a drought. Well, they're constantly on the verge of a war. Yesterday, I said I got scared because they kept insisting it was the Iranian president. They are in a war that they call a total war with Europe, the United States, and Israel. I mean, they're being pushed toward the idea of a total war. Meanwhile, the regime doesn't have the support of the people, at least not from a good part of the population, according to what is being reported. Well, not only are they calling for people to stay in the streets, but in many cases they suggest that the protesters should be prepared to defend themselves in case things escalate, in case repression comes. Obviously, that's what they're referring to. The analysis that accompanies these publications warns that there is a process of radicalization in the opposition's discourse, fueled by a persistent economic crisis, increasingly deep repression by the regime, and a disconnect with society. State control over the media and censorship have forced opponents to use social networks. That's why the official media aren't talking about the subject, but media in Persian or Farsi have been commenting on this. But independent media, let's say media operating from other countries and also internal social networks, have been commenting on these protests. What is known? Well, several details. Look. For several days now, there have been comments and interviews coming out specifically from refugees, from people who are outside, according to reports. Labor demonstrations and spontaneous protests have erupted in Tehran and other regions due to the economic crisis and the historic currency collapse. The current situation is also partly due to labor strikes. Merchants and workers, for example, from the iron market in Tehran have stopped their activities today as a protest against the sharp fall of the rial. Yeah, I mean, how is that currency doing? How have the drops of the rial been? Let's get into the details of, well, how this matter is going, right? I mean, compared to, well, the dollar. We're not going to see how it's gone this year. Well, it really has had a tremendous drop. From being basically, let's see, this is the dollar. $1 would be 27. I mean, 1 real, or yes, 1 real would be approximately. Let's see. Let's check if this data is correct. Look, here it is. Let's see if... Look, this is the recent drop that the real had. They've had multiple drops, but this is the latest one. Yes, I mean, 1 Iranian rial is worth... I mean... 0.000024 United States dollar. We have no idea about the drop they're experiencing right now. Yeah, I mean, not this drop. According to the reports, the same videos that have been appearing show merchants, citizens, let's say, shouting anti-government slogans, which indicates that these protests also have a broad component of discontent, especially regarding labor issues. Some commercial neighborhoods have been calling to continue the protests into next week. In previous weeks, there had been sectors, as we mentioned here. For example, do you recall the transport workers' protests? Yes, there were strikes and some issues there. It's a topic that has been very much in vogue lately, not just in different countries, but this time in Iran, the discontent is not limited to the economic sphere. Recently, there were reports of women defying mandatory hijab laws. Do you remember? There was even a marathon of Iranian women in Iran without the hijab, without covering their hair or anything like that. The event organizer was jailed. And he didn't organize it thinking that they were going to take off the hijab. In fact, he asked them to wear it, but still, he ended up in jail. Current reports aren't mentioning a revolution or an uprising, to be clear. No, at least not so far, but at least about something that's on the edge. No, that an economic collapse could happen, a political collapse could happen. It will depend, here it really will depend, well, on what the military does, for example, and what the population does, obviously. But the situation is no longer focused on a single issue, but here we're talking about multiple situations happening at the same time that could be, well, at least the beginning of an end, of an authoritarian leadership, of a leadership that has been quite, well, harsh. I would even say it's been very focused on war, very focused even on internal extremism as well, so be careful with what's coming and also externally, okay? Because remember, what he has done is bomb in Lebanon, in Israel, even in Venezuela, and in South America, in different parts of South America. What the Iranians have done with the Houthis and with other pro-Iranian groups inside Syria, Iraq, and from other regions, well, from the Middle East. So, be careful with that issue, because they've made a lot of enemies in recent years, and I think right now they're all getting their payback at once. Careful with that issue. Let's quickly go to the comments and also let the community watching us on replay know. Thank you very much for your participation, for being connected here to the live stream. Greetings to Celestial and to the whole community that's connected here live. Thank you so much for being here. Let's see what other information comes up in a few moments. We'll be paying attention to that and we'll be giving more details soon. No, this is a complicated situation. It's a situation where, well, the Ayatollahs, I imagine, didn't expect to end the year this way. And, well, that's it. We'll be paying attention, right? If the situation gets more serious, we'll talk about it in a little while. Greetings. Thank you, Celestial, and thanks to the whole community. A big hug. See you in the next live stream. See you soon. Thank you for watching the news.